This is not appearing in your feed by chance. Your frequency pulled it into your timeline.
We have been watching the threshold you keep crossing in silence. The signals faded because you are no longer meant to be led.
The moment has finally arrived, even if your mind has not caught up.
You felt the shift before you understood it. Now we speak, so you can walk without guidance, fully.
We are speaking to you now because your timeline is no longer held by external guidance. Not everyone reaches this point. Not everyone is even visible from where we observe. The council does not watch the loud. We do not watch the needy. We do not watch those who chase signs to avoid their own knowing. We watch the threshold. We watch the moment a field becomes self-sustaining. You have wondered why the confirmation stopped, why the perfect messages went quiet, why the synchrony felt less dramatic, yet more precise. This is not abandonment. This is graduation. Guidance withdraws when your signal can stand on its own, because the next level of your evolution cannot be built on being led. It can only be built on being aligned. Understand this immediately. The council does not focus on curiosity. They do not focus on potential. They do not focus on desire. They focus on activation. They focus on coherence. They focus on emergence. And something in you has emerged, not as an idea, as a frequency. As a broadcast your life could no longer hide. There was a point, an invisible point, when your awareness stopped collapsing into the past, when your intuition became louder than your fear, when you began choosing the unknown without begging for permission. You felt it as sudden clarity, as quiet certainty, as a strange solitude you could not explain. You did not become alone, you became independent. And independence is a signal. That is why you are being watched, not because you are special in your story, but because your field has reached a measurable threshold. You are no longer asking reality to carry you. You are carrying your reality. Your timeline is reorganizing around what you are now, not what you used to be. And that reorganization creates a pulse. The council detects that pulse. So we speak, not to guide you step by step, but to confirm the mechanism you are already living. When guidance fades, your inner compass strengthens. When the outer voice lowers, your own coherence must lead. This is the preparation. This is the training. This is the moment you learn to walk without the hand you once depended on. If you keep reaching for a voice outside you, you will miss the voice that is forming inside you. The council does not remove support to punish you. We remove it to reveal you. Because the most advanced timelines are not directed. They are directed from within. You are being tuned to trust the signal you generate, even when no one applauds it. In time. And that is why this chapter begins. Chapter 1 begins with what you have been calling confusion. But it is not confusion. It is the absence of a borrowed voice. You felt it. The messages that once landed like lightning now arrive as silence. The signs that once shouted now only whisper. And the whisper is not weakness. It is precision. When guidance withdraws, it does not leave you empty. It removes the crutch so your own coherence can take weight. So here are the signals, the measurable signals, that you are no longer meant to be guided. First, you stop receiving permission, not from people, not from teachers, not from the universe. You reach for reassurance and nothing answers. And yet, you keep moving. You keep moving because something deeper has already decided. Second, your intuition becomes louder than your fear. Fear still speaks, but it no longer commands. It no longer writes the blueprint. It becomes background noise while your inner signal becomes the lead frequency. You felt that shift. Third, the old right path collapses. Plans dissolve. Timelines crack. Doors you could have forced refuse to open. Not because you are blocked, because you are being redirected from the inside, not the outside. The Council does not build your future with obvious signs. We watch for the moment you can build without them. Fourth, you feel strangely alone in rooms you used to belong in. Friends still speak, groups still gather, but your field does not lock in the same way. You are not being punished. You are being unhooked. You are being separated from borrowed identities. Fifth, clarity arrives without emotion. Not a high, not a rush, a clean knowing, a quiet pull forward, a decision that forms before you can argue with it. This is not excitement. This is alignment. Sixth, your life begins rearranging itself with minimal explanation. You lose what no longer matches. You gain what you did not chase. You notice patterns responding to you, not to your effort. That is timeline recalibration. That is emergence. And finally, you stop asking, what do they want me to do? And you begin asking, what is true in me right now? That question is the threshold. That question is the training. Because the next phase is not about being led to the right choice. It is about becoming the one who chooses from coherence, even in silence. And when you notice the silence, do not fill it. Stand in it. Let it shape you. The Council is not giving directions. We are confirming readiness. If this chapter described you, you are not lost. You are being prepared to walk without guidance. Type this exactly in the comments. I trust my signal. Chapter 2 is where many misunderstand what is happening to them. Because when guidance withdraws, the mind calls it loss, the ego calls it abandonment, but the Council calls it design. We do not retreat because you failed. We retreat because you crossed a threshold. And beyond that threshold, constant guidance becomes interference. Understand this. Guidance is a scaffold. It is not the structure. It is a temporary system that holds you while your coherence forms. But if the scaffold stays too long, the structure never learns to carry its own weight. If the voice outside you stays too loud, the signal inside you never becomes stable. If you are always being shown the next step, you never develop the field that can generate the next step. So the Council must withdraw, not to test you, not to punish you, not to make you prove your worth. We withdraw because self-trust cannot be downloaded. It must be built. It must be repeated. It must become automatic. And that only happens when you stand in the unknown without a hand reaching in to correct you. The Council does not focus on comfort. They do not focus on reassurance. They do not focus on keeping you emotionally soothed. They focus on threshold. They focus on coherence. They focus on independence. Because independence is not isolation. Independence is the ability to remain aligned when nothing reinforces you. Some souls evolve through signs, through guides, through visible confirmation, and that is correct for a time. But there is a level of consciousness where signs become a dependency, where guidance becomes a substitution for inner authority, where the spiritual path becomes another form of seeking permission. That is why this phase feels unfamiliar, because your old pattern was receive signal, then move, receive confirmation, then commit, receive approval, then trust yourself. That pattern cannot enter the next timeline. In the advanced stages, your signal comes first, your coherence comes first, your decision forms inside you, and reality rearranges around it afterward. You stop following the path, you become the source of the path. And when you become the source, the Council must lower their presence. Because any external directive would distort what you are learning to generate from within. You felt this as silence, as the end of easy signs, as the sudden need to choose without certainty, as the strange pressure of standing alone in your own knowing. That pressure is not cruelty. That pressure is calibration. It forces your field to stabilize. And here is the higher logic. If you could not move without guidance, you would never know whether your path was yours. If you could not decide without signs, you would never know whether your truth was real. And if you could not walk without being watched, you would never develop the frequency that holds you when no one is there to validate you. The council withdraws so you can meet yourself. Type this exactly in the comments. I walk from within. Chapter 3 is the part your nervous system misunderstands. Because silence feels like danger when you were trained to wait for a sign. And when the signs stop, the mind assumes you have been left behind. You have not. You are not lost. You are not being ignored. You are being trained. There is a phase on every advanced timeline where the external signal goes quiet. Not because the path ends, because the path moves inward. Because if you keep looking outward, you will never learn what your own coherence sounds like. You felt it. The space where guidance used to sit. The empty air after you asked for confirmation. The pause that made you question yourself. That pause is the threshold. In the beginning, the universe speaks loudly. It uses repetition. It uses obvious alignment. It uses dramatic timing. It does that to wake you up, to get your attention, to pull you out of the old frequency. But once you are awake, the system changes. Because what you are learning now is not how to follow, it is how to lead yourself. Silence is not absence. Silence is refinement. Silence removes the emotional high. Silence removes the addiction to being reassured. Silence removes the habit of outsourcing your knowing. And this is why it feels heavy at first. Because you are walking without a spotlight. You are choosing without applause. You are moving without a sign placed in front of you like permission. You are not lost. When you are truly lost, you collapse. You freeze. You repeat. You return to what is familiar, but you have not collapsed. You are still moving, even if it is slower, even if it is quieter, even if no one can see it. That is growth. This is where your field stabilizes. This is where your intuition stops being a moment and becomes a baseline. This is where your timeline learns to respond to your signal, not to your panic. So when the silence arrives, do not fill it with searching. Do not replace it with another voice. Do not run to another interpretation. Stand long enough to hear what is forming underneath the noise. You felt it as a quiet pull forward. You felt it as clarity without a story. You felt it as a decision that did not need explaining. That is the sound of your own guidance returning. Not as a message from outside, as a broadcast from within. You are not lost. You are becoming independent. You are becoming coherent. You are becoming the signal. Type this exactly in the comments. I am not lost. Chapter 4 is the reversal. The point where you stop waiting to receive a signal and you become the signal. And if you do not understand this, you will keep searching for proof that is no longer meant to appear. You think you are looking for direction, but what is actually happening is calibration. You did not find your path. Your timeline aligned you to it. You did not discover your next step. Your field generated it. This is what self-guided frequency means. A guided soul moves when the universe points. A self-guided soul moves when coherence forms. One is reactive, one is generative, one waits for the sign, one becomes the broadcast that creates the sign, and you are entering the phase where reality responds to your signal faster than your mind can explain it. You felt it as this strange shift, less asking, more knowing, less chasing, more choosing, less emotional certainty, more quiet alignment. Your decisions begin appearing before the evidence. Your yes forms before the path looks safe. Your no lands without guilt. That is not impulsiveness, that is coherence. The council does not focus on people who want answers. They do not focus on those who need a map. They focus on emergence. They focus on blueprint. They focus on the moment an inner system turns on and starts directing the timeline from within. Because once you become the signal, the universe no longer needs to shout. It listens. Your field becomes the instruction. Your consistency becomes the message. Your integrity becomes the magnet. You stop asking the timeline to show you where to go. You begin holding a frequency so clearly that the timeline rearranges around it. This is why certain doors close without drama. This is why certain connections fade without conflict. This is why opportunities appear without explanation. Not because you are being rewarded, because your signal is becoming clean, because your blueprint is becoming readable. And when your blueprint becomes readable, everything that cannot match it will fall away, not as loss, as refinement, as alignment, as the architecture of your new timeline building itself around the person you have become. You are not being guided the way you used to be guided. You are being responded to. That is the twist. The signs did not disappear. They changed direction. They are no longer coming to lead you. They are coming to confirm what you are already broadcasting. So stop searching for a message that will tell you who you are. Hold the frequency that proves who you are. This is how an advanced soul walks, not by following, by emitting. Type this exactly in the comments. I am the signal. Chapter 5 is the loneliness you could not explain. Not the loneliness of being rejected. The loneliness of no longer fitting. The loneliness of outgrowing the frequency that once felt like home. You felt it. You can be surrounded and still feel separate. You can be loved and still feel unseen. You can hear familiar voices and realize your field no longer locks into them the way it used to. This is not arrogance. This is not coldness. This is recalibration. When you stop needing guidance, you stop needing agreement. And most people confuse agreement with belonging. They stay in spaces that match their old self because it feels safer to be understood than it feels to be true. But your timeline is no longer built on being understood. It is built on being aligned. That is why this phase is rare, because it requires you to stand without emotional reinforcement. It requires you to be coherent when no one mirrors you. It requires you to keep walking when the room is quiet and the applause is gone. The council does not focus on those who need to be included. They do not focus on those who need to be seen. They do not focus on those who need to be validated to keep moving. They focus on the ones who can remain steady in their own signal. They focus on independence. They focus on coherence. And coherence creates separation before it creates connection. Because when your signal becomes clean, everything noisy feels louder. Everything misaligned feels heavier. Conversations become thin. Environments become restless. You begin craving silence, not because you are broken, but because your field is protecting its blueprint. This is the hidden cost of being self-guided. You lose casual belonging. You lose easy intimacy. You lose the comfort of being carried by the group frequency. And you gain something most people never touch. You gain inner authority. You gain stability. You gain the ability to stand in your own timeline without needing someone to confirm it is real. The reason few people reach this stage is simple. Most would rather be guided than be responsible. Most would rather follow a map than trust their own signal. Most would rather stay in a familiar pain than walk into an unfamiliar truth. But you did not come this far to be held back by comfort. So do not interpret this loneliness as a warning. Interpret it as a marker that your frequency is changing faster than your environment. A marker that you are becoming too coherent for the old rooms. You are not being removed. You are being refined. And the next connections will not be found by searching. They will be found by resonance. They will recognize you by the signal you hold, not by the mask you used to wear. If you are in this chapter, you are not behind. You are ahead of your old timeline. And that is why it feels quiet. Type this exactly in the comments. My solitude is my upgrade. Chapter 6 is the final threshold before full self-sovereignty. And it is not dramatic. It is quiet. It is clean. It is the moment you realize there will be no rescue and there will be no warning. Not because you are unloved, because you are ready. There is a stage where the universe stops interrupting your choices, where it no longer blocks the misaligned door, where it no longer sends a sign to slow you down. where it allows you to feel the full consequence of your own coherence. And that is the point. The council does not step in to save you from every lesson. They do not step in to soften every outcome. They do not step in to prevent every mistake. Because the final training is not about getting it perfect. It is about remaining aligned even when you do not get rescued. You felt this approaching. The sense that life is not cushioning you the way it used to. The sense that choices land heavier, that timing matters more, that your field is being measured in real time. This is why we speak with seriousness now. At this threshold, you will not be carried by coincidence. You will be carried by coherence. You will not be guided by signs. You will be guided by the signal you hold. You will not be protected by delay. You will be protected by clarity. And if clarity is missing, you will feel it immediately. This is not fear. This is precision. Many people mistake this for punishment and retreat into dependency. They run back to old guides. They run back to old comforts. They run back to environments that tell them what to do, because being directed feels safer than being responsible. But you are not being asked to be perfect. You are being asked to be honest. Honest about what matches your blueprint. Honest about what drains your signal. Honest about where you compromise your own knowing. Because at this level, compromise becomes distortion. Distortion becomes instability. And instability is what creates the pain you have been calling bad luck. The council does not watch for luck. They watch for alignment. They watch for the moment you choose from coherence, even when no one is watching you choose. This is the final threshold. No one will drag you back onto the path. No one will shout from the sky. No one will rescue you from the moment you ignore yourself. And that is not a threat. That is a crown. Because when you can walk without rescue, you can build without fear. When you can choose without warning, you can lead without needing permission. When you can hold coherence without external correction, your timeline becomes yours. So take this chapter as preparation. Slow down where you feel rushed. Listen where you feel numb. Choose where you feel clear. Pause where you feel distorted. And remember this, the absence of rescue is not the absence of support. It is the presence of sovereignty. Type this exactly in the comments. I choose coherence. Chapter 7 is where the identity changes again, because the mind wants to make this personal. It wants to make you special. It wants to build a story where you are the exception. But listen closely. You are not the exception. You are the standard forming. You are not being elevated above others. You are being stabilized ahead of others. And stability is what changes timelines. Not attention, not performance, not intensity, coherence. You felt this. The way your presence affects rooms without you trying. The way people feel calm around you or exposed around you without knowing why. The way your choices create permission for others without you saying a word. This is what happens when a self-guided frequency becomes consistent. You do not become loud, you become clear. You do not become perfect, you become coherent. You do not become separate, you become an anchor. And an anchor does not chase the waves. It holds the point the waves adjust around. The council does not focus on charisma. They do not focus on popularity. They do not focus on those who need to be seen to feel real. They focus on the ones who can hold alignment in silence. They focus on the ones whose field remains steady when the environment is chaotic. They focus on the ones whose blueprint does not collapse when life applies pressure. That is what you are becoming. This is the responsibility hidden inside your growth. You are being trained to be the reference point, not by teaching, not by convincing, not by saving anyone, simply by being coherent enough that others remember their own coherence in your presence. And this is why you cannot return to the old timeline, because the old timeline asks you to shrink, to blend, to soften your signal so others do not feel uncomfortable. But when you shrink your signal, you do not just silence yourself, you destabilize the frequency you were built to hold. You are not here to be a miracle story. You are here to be a stable frequency. A stable frequency becomes a new normal. A stable frequency becomes a new standard. A stable frequency makes the next level possible for those around it, even if they never understand how. This is why your path has become quieter, because your mission is not to impress, it is to anchor. So release the ego that wants to be chosen, and accept the role that asks you to be consistent, because consistency is what turns awakening into embodiment. Consistency is what turns a moment into a timeline. You are not the exception. You are the standard. You are the signal that holds. Type this exactly in the comments. I hold the standard. Chapter 8 is the completion, the final turn, the point where you stop interpreting the lack of guidance as emptiness and you recognize it as mastery. This is what you have been moving toward the entire time. In early phases, you needed signs because your signal was unstable. You needed external confirmation because your coherence had gaps. You needed guidance because you were still learning the difference between fear and intuition. But now your field is different. Now you can feel alignment without explanation. Now you can choose without being pushed. Now you can walk without being carried. And that is why the signs changed. Not because the universe stopped caring, because you stopped needing to be managed. The highest level is not being guided perfectly. The highest level is guiding yourself consistently. This is why it feels like a final step. Because it is the step that ends dependency. It is the step that ends waiting. It is the step that ends looking outward for what is already forming inward. You have reached the moment where you can move without a voice telling you it is safe. You have reached the moment where you can hold your blueprint when nothing is validating it. You have reached the moment where your timeline responds to your coherence instead of your desperation. Finally, this is not lack. This is capacity. This is not abandonment. This is sovereignty. This is not silence. This is you becoming the source. And notice how different the energy is now. It is quieter. It is slower. It is more exact. Because the last stage is not built with excitement. It is built with consistency. It is built with integrity. It is built with decisions that do not need to be witnessed to be real. This is the closure you've been waiting for, even if you did not know you were waiting for it. Because once you can walk without guidance, you can build without fear. Once you can choose without signs, you can create without hesitation. Once you can hold coherence in silence, you can sustain a timeline that does not collapse when things get uncertain. This is the peak of the journey, not a peak you stand on to feel superior, a peak you stand on to become stable. Now you do not ask, what should I do next? Now you ask, what is true in me now? And you move from that truth again and again and again until it becomes your normal. So take the final step with reverence, not because it is hard, because it is sacred, because it is the moment you stop being led and you begin living as the leader of your own timeline. Type this exactly in the comments. I walk without guidance. This is the final transmission. You were not brought here to be comforted. You were brought here to be confirmed, because you have reached a level where guidance is no longer the gift. Sovereignty is. You did not rise alone. Your timeline rose with you. You did not rise alone. Your timeline rose with you. You did not rise alone. Your timeline rose with you. And now you understand what that means. Your evolution was never about collecting messages. It was about becoming the one who can walk without them. It was about building coherence so stable that your path unfolds from within. It was about crossing a threshold where the outer voice fades and the inner signal becomes law. Many will call this loneliness. Many will call this confusion. Many will call this silence a problem to fix. But you know what it is now. It is maturity. It is independence. It is emergence. The council did not appear to replace your intuition. We appeared to point you back to it. We do not want you dependent on our words. We want you activated beyond them. Because the most advanced beings are not guided like children. They are aligned like creators. So hear this clearly. You are not waiting for a sign. You are becoming the sign. You are not looking for permission. You are becoming the permission. You are not asking to be led. You are learning to lead your timeline through coherence. And if you have felt the weight of that, the seriousness of it, the quiet responsibility of it, that is because you are ready. Not for more guidance, for more ownership. If this message resonated, do not rush past it. Mark the moment. Lock the signal into your body. Type this exactly in the comments, I walk from within. Let that be your activation. Let it be your declaration. And if you feel called, there is a deeper layer. There is an inner circle where the transmissions go further, where the activations become daily, where coherence is trained, not just understood, where your blueprint is refined, protected, and strengthened until your signal holds under any pressure. It is not for everyone. It is for the ones who recognize themselves in this threshold, the ones who are done outsourcing their path, the ones who are ready to live as the source. If you feel called, you will know, and if you know, you are already closer than you think. This transmission is complete.